My next guest believes your relationship can be fun and flirty no matter how long you've been married. It comes down to employing specific strategies that will help you keep the spark alive. Joining me is Brotherson, a marriage and family counselor and certified sex therapist. We'll add this conversation. We'll stay in the PG-13 range, but if you want to send little ears out of the room, we always like to give you that heads up and invitation to do so. So, keeping the spark alive. That's kind of a catchphrase, a little cheesy, sort of quintessential in the world of romance, but you firmly believe that all couples can do this no matter how long their commitment runs.
Yeah, I mean, keeping the spark alive. I'm in this for the long haul, and I want to help couples be in it for the long haul. So you've got to know a few little tips that we're going to talk today about how to keep the spark alive, and especially, it's Valentine's. It's one of my favorite things.
Yes, I see you in your pretty red, kind of representing the color of love.
Representing Valentine's.
Here's my question, Laura. How can we realistically gauge, though, where we're at on the passion scale? How our relationship, I mean, you know if it's, I think, doing really well or if it's really struggling. Sometimes in the middle, it can feel a little vague. How do you know how we're doing from a relationship standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about just how the passion is in the marriage overall, I think you're talking about things like how playful the relationship is, how much touch and affection and lovemaking there is, and how much good connecting conversation there is. If you're talking about passion in the bedroom, you're kind of talking about something a little different. Now you're talking about quantity of lovemaking, certainly.
I was going to ask you, do you buy into the idea that quantity matters?
Well, yes and no, but when I throw in this second piece, the quality, that's when I really get more interested, because there is probably a minimum level, according to the research mostly. Couples that are happiest are generally, I hate to say this, generally having sex 2 to 3 times a week. Now, while I say that, I immediately do not want anybody using that number to beat their spouse over the head, and that's usually why I don't use it. But if if that is 2 or 3 times a week of duty sex or charity sex or guilt sex, it's not helping. If it's quality connected sex, then that's what we're talking about for the happiest
couples.
So
at the end of the day, quality trumps.
It's quality trumps.
You have some strategies that we can put into play no matter where our relationship is at on that scale. And at the top of your list, it's kind of surprised me that it was number one, because I know it's important, but this is tip top of your list. You say date night.
Yeah, my license plate on my car says date night.
Does it really?
Yes, it does. But date night is not optional for couples that want to have a close and intimately connected relationship. It's just not optional, because the more marriages die of neglect than of anything else. So if they're dying of neglect, then your number one go-to is date night. And the thing is we've talked about this before, but our foreplay is emotional, is relational. And so date night is fabulous emotional foreplay. Not just for sex, but for the whole relationship.
You talk about touch. That's your next piece of advice, is to touch more. And does touch automatically equal touch in the bedroom?
No, it's two kinds. We need a lot more non-sexual touch, the affection touch. We also probably need a lot more, or at least some more. All the husbands are happy right now. At least a little bit more of the lovemaking touch. The problem that we're having is that I have 2 couples right now that the wives very early on in their marriage learned or were conditioned never to touch their husbands. And so we're 15 years into marriage, and they don't ever touch their husbands because they've learned that they can't ever get non-sexual touch. It's always attached to sex.
It always leads to that.
It always leads to it. And so then you've got a husband that's starving for touch and a wife that's like, I'm not touching you because I can't ever get the kind I want, and I want it to have both kinds. I want to have both kinds.
Talk and connection also made your list. How can we boost that connection?
Yeah, talk and connection is huge, because talk is one of the primary ways, especially that women connect, and it's one of our primary ways we feel connected to our husbands, which then helps us to decide we want to be intimate, because again, we don't have the testosterone to help us out. That's the kind of thing like couple time, that's pillow talk time, it almost needs to be scheduled in our life, even back to date night. We got to almost schedule these things because we're just so busy, they won't happen.
And talk takes energy. I think we've discussed this before, you and I, but I talk all day, right? That's what I do here at work. That's what I do for my job. So to go home and fire up that same engaged conversation with those I love the most, whether it be even a sister or a girlfriend or my spouse, that takes concerted energy. And I think a lot of people, sometimes at the end of the day, just kind of kick back and let the silence sit. It's work, but it's worth it.
Yeah, but the problem is that back to my comment about more marriages die of neglect, this is why. Because if you get home at the end of the day, if we all get home at the end of the day and our energy is spent. That's why one of my chapters in this book is time. If you aren't prioritizing your relationship and lovemaking, it's probably not going to happen or not be good.
You want couples to nurture playfulness, to
Yes.
really be more lighthearted with each
Yes.
other.
And I think we've talked about this before, but I think that's kind of my number one go-to as to how well a couple are doing is how playful they are, mutually playful, not one spouse teasing mercilessly the other one who doesn't like it. But that playfulness really does create that spark.
And 30 seconds, why is novelty so important, Laura?
Because we're in it for the long haul. I want marriages to last. There's nothing more heartbreaking than these 30-year marriages that are dissolving. And if we can't, we've got to find ways to keep novelty, adventure, creativity, fun, flirty. You've got to have that in there because the brains need novelty, at least some.
You're
And
so
I've got
good.
a whole chapter on that
You're
too.
so good. I was just going to say, your book is kind of the Bible as far as this topic goes. Where can we get our hands on this?
Yeah, probably anywhere, but strengtheningmarriage.com is where they can learn more and buy it online, everything else.
All right. Thanks for handling it so respectfully, this topic, as you always do.